Well, good evening, dear friends. As I mentioned in my previous video, I want to make another video where I read a portion of Proverbs again. This time, I'll be reading from chapter 6. From chapter 6 of Proverbs. And of course, chapter 6 is in between chapter 5 and 7. And it's in the context of chapter 5 and 7, and they are related. I'll be talking about that a little more after I read this small portion. So I'll be reading chapter 6 verses 16 to 19, and this is a King James Version. So sorry if you hear some Old English words. It says this: "These 6 things doth the Lord hate, yea, 7 are an abomination unto him: a proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, an heart that deviseth wicked imaginations, feet that be swift in running to mischief, a false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among brethren." So the writer of the Proverbs lists 7 different, what he calls abominations, things that God abominates and hates. There's a Catholic tradition, I'm not a Catholic, that talk about the 7 mortal sins. But it's not in the Bible. And I guess the closest thing that we have here to the 7 mortal sins is actually what I just read. 7 sins that God absolutely hates. And it's not things like gluttony. But what we have is things like, first, a proud look. That look in your eye that you have when you're walking out and you're all acting like the boss. You're just looking down on everybody, thinking that you're so good. Your eyes all the way up in your forehead, and just hating on people. That kind of look. And the second thing is a lying tongue. This little muscle in your mouth that speaks lies, what is not true, for your own gain and benefit. And hands that shed innocent blood. What's the prime example of that? Abortion. A heart that devises wicked imagination. Heart was also another word for mind, I believe, in the Bible. The part that imagines things. The part of you, your body, that plans and imagines. So a mind that imagines dirty thoughts and violent things. That's a heart that devises wicked imaginations. Feet that be swift in running to mischief. Your feet that runs to do what is inappropriate, going to the wrong places at the wrong time, going to the parties and going to do something evil, to rob somebody or what have you. And a false witness that speaks lies, again, having to do with your mouth, speaking lies about somebody to harm them. And he that soweth discord, saying things like gossiping and backbiting someone to make people divided. These are what God absolutely hates. And the first observation I want to make is, notice how the author kind of focuses in on the actual body parts that are used to do these things. For example, a lying tongue. He doesn't say lying. He says lying tongue. And also he says hands that shed innocent blood. And the feet that run to mischief. And heart that imagines wicked things. So it's the body parts that sin this thing called sin likes to control. Sin is something that you do with your body. And if you can theoretically control your body, then you can control whether you sin or not. The problem is that you cannot control your body, and that's why you are a slave to sin. For those of you who are outside of Jesus. And this is what Paul explains in his letter. The Apostle Paul, who was the one that planted many churches and progressed Christianity, not progressive Christianity, but progressed Christianity in the early centuries. He says this in Romans chapter 7, that there is a law working in his body, the law of sin working in his members or his body parts. He says that in his body there is absolutely nothing good. And he says, do not let sin control your body. So sin is something that controls your body, and your body can either be used as a tool for sin or righteousness, as an instrument for evil or for good. So the first observation is that sin is something that is done with specifically, physically, with your body parts. It's in the flesh. The second observation I want to make is sandwiched between chapter 5 and chapter 7. And chapter 5 and 6 and 7, there's a common repeating theme, and it is warning against adultery. The writer, singular, of Proverbs devotes 3 chapters to saying how you should not commit adultery, sexual immorality, sleeping with someone who is not your wife or your husband. And again, that is a sin that you do with your body. It's the primary example of sin that is done with your body. It is the sin of the flesh, sexual immorality. And so if the writer of the Proverbs devotes 3 different chapters to talk about how you shouldn't commit adultery, how it is to your own harm if you commit adultery, and how serious is this sin, the sin of the flesh, of adultery? I think this sin, sexual immorality, is the number 1 most common sin that ruins peoples throughout history. It's the sin that gets the most number of people. Jesus said, even if you look at a person with lust, you have already committed adultery with that person in your heart. And that it is better that you take out your eyes, you pluck out your eyes and cut off your hand, than you keep them and go to hell with them. So whoever it is that is, watching and listening, if you are in the sin of adultery, you must really listen to this warning that those who go down the path of adultery is like a cow that is going to the slaughterhouse. It is like a bird that is going into the trap and the snare. So let this be a warning. The Bible was written so that you might keep out of danger and you might find the way of salvation, which is Jesus the Christ. So look over these words and think about them, and I hope you take both warning and fear with you, so that you might not end up in destruction.